Welcome to C3 in This Together, 30 minutes in our own voice, our series surrounding disabling disabilities. Today, we will hear from someone with a lived experience who's coping, managing, and navigating disabilities and special needs. My hope throughout this series is that together, we will be the generation that creates awareness that individuals with disabilities and special needs are differently enabled and that disability does not mean a lack of ability. And I want to say it again, right? My hope again throughout this series is that we would create this awareness, most important awareness, that individuals with disabilities and special needs are differently enabled and that disability does not mean a lack of ability. Today, our guest is Dr. uh, Okanlami. He is the Director of Student Accessibility and Accommodation Services at the University of Michigan, where he oversees the offices of student services, students with disabilities, which includes two testing accommodation centers, the Adaptive Sports and Fitness Program. He is also an assistant professor of family medicine, physical medicine and rehabilitation, and urology at Michigan Medicine, as well as an adjunct professor at the Orthopedic Surgery School of Medicine at UCLA. His story has been featured on ABC's Good Morning America with Robin Roberts, CBS News, PBS News, and MSNBC. We are so glad to have today and honored. We'll call him Dr. O for our series today. Welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Cassell.
Well, let's jump right in. Tell us your story and your journey surrounding disabilities and special needs.
So, with respect to disability, I tell people that I'm born to two physician parents in Nigeria, and we moved to this country when I was young. My parents had to redo their residency training in Maryland, and then we moved to the Midwest, where I went to elementary school and then went out to high school in Western Massachusetts. And I was an athlete throughout my life. I played all sports: basketball, soccer, lacrosse, track. But I also was active, involved in student leadership and Big Brothers Big Sister. I sang, I danced, I acted. And so diversity was just part of my life, right? Diversity was not a checkbox. It was what I saw in the melting pot of the world in which my parents put us in, of seeing people from all different walks of life. And I ended up going out to California for college, where I continued to run track. And then I went to medical school at the University of Michigan and then matched into orthopedic surgery residency at Yale. And it was in my third year of orthopedic surgery residency that I experienced a spinal cord injury from a diving accident, which then paralyzed me from my chest down and gave me minimal use of my upper extremities. Now, I tell people that it was until this point, right, where I started to see life, what I say, from the other side of the stethoscope. Because I had always been a physician, I'd always taken care of people with disabilities, but I did not realize how inaccessible the world actually was for people living with disability until I then experienced life with disability. So I think that then drastically changed my sort of perspective on the world. I had inpatient rehab in Chicago. I was introduced to adaptive sports and rehab. I went back to Indiana to be with my family and got a master's degree in engineering, science, and technology entrepreneurship, where I then worked on creating solutions using technology and entrepreneurship for problems that people face that live with disability. And then I finished a family medicine residency before coming back to Michigan to have my faculty appointment now. And so my work now is truly hoping to then provide equitable opportunities and access for individuals living with disability, compared to their non-disabled peers, whether that's educational access, whether that's access to physical and emotional health and wellness. And so in general, that's sort of my mission as a young, disabled, Black, Christian, Nigerian immigrant man, cisgender, heterosexual individual. And so I know that I've been born with many, many privileges, but I also know that I've been subject to many prejudices. And disability is just one of those that people look at disability. And as you say, right, disability is not lack of ability. And interestingly, your words and mine are very similar. I say disabusing disability,
Wow.
trying to demonstrate that disability is not inability. And you say disabling disabilities to show that disability is not a lack of ability. So it's an honor to be here with you today, Dr. Cassell.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. O, and thank you for sharing your story. I know you've shared it so many times, but so many of us that will be listening through this medium, I know we're going to be encouraged, inspired, blessed, receive hope. I like what you said about seeing things from the other side, and I'll use that language, right? My hope is that as we navigate this together through this series, that people would see through new eyes. And I like what you've said, disabusing disability, right? So my hope, my friends, is as Dr. O has shared about seeing things from the other side, is that you and I would see things from the other side through new eyes, whatever that might be. Let's move to our next question that I want to ask here is, what would you say to someone or a loved one who's managing a disability or special needs? How would you talk to caregivers, loved ones, clergy, organizations, and even the individual themselves?
Well, it's an interesting way that you frame the question. And I would say I would first talk to the individual himself,
Mhm.
because I think too often what happens with disability is people look at you and people think that we cannot speak for ourselves. They think that
Mhm.
we must always have someone there helping us. Now, by no means is help a problem. And so I want to make that very clear, because if you do, have someone who assists you in your activities of daily living, that by no means is meant to then indicate that you are less than in some way. But I also want to make sure that people don't automatically assume that someone with a disability cannot use their voice, or that someone with a disability is not able to advocate for themselves.
Mhm.
So, first thing I would do is speak to the individual with the disability. And then, of course, if there are people within their family, their community, their life that are part of their journey, I welcome as many people into that. But the thing I would say is that there's nothing wrong with you,
Mhm.
and there's nothing wrong with them, if depending on who I'm speaking to, right? So there's nothing wrong with the individual with the disability. And what has happened in our world is that because of the inaccessible nature and because of the ableism that exists in our world, people who live with disabilities are made to feel as though they are the problem. They are what needs to be fixed. And so that's what I would say, is that there's nothing wrong with you. And don't let people instill that in you. Don't let people ask you what's wrong or what
Mhm.
happened, right? Life happened. Nothing is wrong. This is who I am. And while I lived the majority of my life without having any physical disability, now that I have a physical disability, it's just as much of a part of my life as my blackness is, as my maleness is, as my Christianity is. And so therefore I say to people, while some people will then, weaponize maleness, blackness, Christianity, they'll weaponize disability as well. And I don't think any of those things are negative. And so I think people can assign negativity to them. People
Mhm.
see a black man coming up to them in the street and they might feel something immediately. Similarly, people might see someone rolling down the street in a wheelchair having a physical disability and it means something. I want to tell people, do not allow the society to then put a
Yes.
label on you and tell you how you should feel about yourself. What we need to do is create more accessibility in our society so that individuals with disabilities are able to have full access.
Wow. Wow, such a wealth of resource and just insight, and I really want to echo that we are so careful and mindful of the language that we ascribe to people, regardless of what their experience might be, because all of us have a story, and you said it right. Your story certainly is not my story, but my story is not your story, right? So I really want to echo that for someone listening, a family member, a loved one, the individual themselves, right? And all of us. Let's not allow people to assign labels to us, right? We are not our labels, our challenges. I say this as a clinician. You are not your diagnosis, right? I say this as a clinician. You are not your disability. It's what you are managing. It's what you're coping with. It's what you're navigating. So thank you so much for echoing that, and really, I want to shout that really loud, right? The other thing I'd add to that, Dr. O, is this idea of reminding people that regardless of what your story is, become the best version of yourself, right? Create your own room, create your own lane. Let's ask this other question. Uh, what do you want people to know? And of course, a lot is being said currently in our culture regarding mental health awareness. managing our mental health. It's the work that I do at the National Alliance on Mental Illness and here at C3 in this together. But what do you want people to know about managing our mental health?
So, we spend a lot of time talking about physical disabilities, but something that I always mention to people is that I want people to remember that not all disabilities are visible. And so we talk about physical disability when we discuss disability, and we tend to forget about the non-apparent or invisible disabilities that are also there. And so when we talk about how inaccessible our world is, people are talking about ramps and curb cuts and elevators and lifts, but we don't also acknowledge the non-apparent, non-visible disabilities, which mental health will fall into that if you have mental illness as well, right? If someone was talking about neurodiversity, right, that is also a non-apparent disability that this is a whole nother conversation, but some people, depending on where you fall, do not see individuals that are neurodiverse as having disability. And that's because a lot of times people want to then see, being neurodiverse as an asset, in the way that the world views disability is from a deficit mindset. And so therefore, if that's how people view it, then you being, having sort of neurodiversity would then be a negative thing from someone that sees disability as a negative thing. But if you go back to what I said earlier, I don't see disability as negative. I don't see disability as a problem. I see it as just a part of my life. And so therefore, when we talk about the non-apparent disabilities, when we talk about mental health, I think that I see mental health just like physical health. It's on a continuum that all of us are somewhere, right? And I think what we do is we pathologize mental illness in a way that then makes it that person's fault, makes it something that that person needs to then control. And you can't control your mental health any more than you can control your stomach health. And so why is it that when someone's allowed to have Crohn's or IBS or something that was happening inside, but what's happening in here is apparently your fault? And so I think that there's a spectrum, as I say, and I do not want to stigmatize mental health or mental illness any more than I then talk about physical health or physical illness. And therefore, there's truly no line that you can draw in the sand that says that this person is healthy, this person is well. And we should not pathologize and sort of ostracize mental illness in a way, because I tell my patients all the time as a practicing physician that if your stomach hurt, I wouldn't blame you, right? I would ask you questions about where it hurts and what happens to you when your stomach hurts. Do you have gas? Do you have diarrhea? Do you have constipation? Where does it hurt? And the same thing happens with mental health. And if there's something happening with your mental health that makes you then do something that is not comfortable for you or others around you, let us help you sort out how you can then live in a way that you are not causing yourself any pain or discomfort, and you are not causing anyone else any pain or discomfort. And I know that you're not hoping to then do so, but there are times where your mental or physical health may cause you to then cause injury or illness or burden to yourself or others. And that's something that we all manage together. So, I mean, that's a long-winded answer, but mental health to me and physical health are hand in hand. And we should not treat any differently mental health than we treat physical health.
Wow, thank you for sharing that from your space and your perspective, because this is exactly what this series is about, right? As we talk a lot about mental health and mental health awareness. And I like what you've said about not ascribing a pathology to that. And I'll add to that, let's not demonize or criminalize mental illness. We see that a lot. And then part of my work is mental health parity. This idea of seeing mental health and the same, giving mental health the same priority that we give to medical health, because there's no difference, right? Absolutely not. I love what you said, and I'm going to steal that. Let's not draw a line in the sand, because we do that. And I must be mindful of that as a clinician, right? That I don't draw a line in the sand, because I see this so often. One of the things, and I love saying this, and I smile as I say it, and I've been sharing it, is that I believe that we need to treat mental health and mental illness and mental awareness the way that we deal with roaches. So I let you kind of lean into that. And what I mean by that, Dr. O, is this idea of roaches function in the dark. But the moment that you turn on the lights, they go scattering, right? And that's what this series is doing. We're turning on the lights on the things that we manage and navigate. As we begin to wrap up, what do you want people to know about disability, special needs awareness? What's your thoughts surrounding that?
I think one of the things I tell people is that I did not recognize the inaccessibility of our world until after I had started to live life on both sides of the stethoscope. And so a phrase that I use is that the past may not be your fault, but the future will be. And so
Wow.
what is it that each of us can do to make somebody's tomorrow better than their yesterday? I'm the first to raise my hand and say that I was unaware of things regarding inaccessibility. And now that I live this life, I am dedicated to trying to make it better.
Wow.
Similarly, I talk about what I experience as a Black man in this country and racism that exists. But I say to people that you don't have to be a disabled Black man to recognize ableism or racism. And so, therefore, what we all can do is figure out when we now have seen or heard that someone is experiencing any sort of ism, what can we do to then make it such that everybody's tomorrow is better than their yesterday? Not just a tomorrow that benefits me, but a tomorrow that's going to benefit people that don't look, think, feel, act, dress, worship, eat like me. And so, with respect to mental health, with respect to disability, with respect to special needs, this is something that, people often use disability and special needs interchangeably. And I like to say to some people that personally, I I tend to shy away from the word special needs. Reason being is that I don't think that my needs as a disabled person are any more special than anyone else's. I have the same needs, which are really the rights that everyone has: a right to live, a right to
Yes.
love, a right to live and educate, and all these things that everybody has access to. That when you don't provide it to people with disabilities, now it becomes special that we have those requests. So this is not me saying that people should not use that term and everyone's entitled to the terms that they are comfortable with and how they choose to identify. But I like to just encourage people to say, I don't want you to think of the needs of the disability community as special, because these are things that everybody has as a default. And we are then now 31 plus years after the ADA, struggling to just get to the floor, not even the ceiling, and not even the stars in terms of accessibility for the disability community. So that's what I would say. It's really just recognizing that we all have a role we can play within our spheres of influence to make someone's tomorrow better than their yesterday, when we recognize that accessibility is not there, whether it be physical accessibility or any other means of providing access and inclusion for the disability community.
Wow, great insight, and I like the how you've navigated the language of disability, special needs, and how you've highlighted that. And what we'll say to people, and I'll echo what Dr. O said, is just be aware. And one of the things that I do is I lean in with people. I ask the question, "How would you like for me to refer to you?" Right? Because what you're doing is, uh, you're walking in empathy, and that's what empathy is, right? It's walking as much as you can in someone else's shoes and saying, I see you, I hear you, I value you, right? And I'm on this journey with you. So we do want to echo that for those who are watching, right? That whatever language you would like to ascribe to who you are, right? That's what we lean into, because that's your story and your journey. And I'd also just like to thank you, Dr. O. As we begin to bring this to a close, you talked about your journey, and I can align with that as an African American man, as an African American man, as a Caribbean man. I shared with you as a Jamaican born immigrant. Right, I understand the some of the prejudice and the journey that we are on. I understand that for me, and this is my story, that there's no such thing as an unarmed Black man when the color of my skin is viewed as a weapon. But what I've chosen to do is to not give into episodic anger, but instead to use my platform, use my journey and my experience to bring hope to others. So that's what we would say to those who are listening. Whatever your story is, bring hope, bring healing. Become what I'm calling an emotional loan officer, is what I've been coining the term, where we let people know I will give to you what you emotionally need in that moment. I loan you my hope. I loan you my strength. I loan you my resiliency. I loan you my silence in the midst of your chaos until you can loan it to someone else. Dr. O, this has been absolutely amazing. Where can people reach out to you and tell us a little bit more about your work surrounding diversity, equity, and inclusion.
So people are welcome to find me on Twitter. That's usually the easiest medium, and that's just my last name is at Okanlami, Okanlam as in Mary I, at Okanlami. And then, with respect to diversity, equity, and inclusion, I tell people that disability is often left out of conversations related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so when I listen to those words, diversity, equity, inclusion, disability is scattered throughout that entire thing. So I tell people disability is the ubiquitous thread that touches everything, because not that this is not said in a threatening way, but disability is that one community that any one of us may join at any point in our lives. And so therefore, providing access for the disability community is not just providing access for them. It's making sure that the world in which we all live is one that we can all live in. And so diversity, equity, and inclusion talks often about race, gender, ethnicity, socioeconomic status. Disability needs to be a very, very prominent part of these DEI conversations, because the disability community in and of itself is very diverse. And providing equity is giving each person what they need to have access, which doesn't mean giving each person the same thing. And then you make sure that everyone is included in every aspect of the life that they want to be able to live. So disability could be a great sort of gateway into talking about how we can then improve diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives by making sure that the disability community is able to access all of the things that we're doing. So that's what I'd say, and I look forward to connecting with you more, Dr. Cassell, and any of your listeners that are able to find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and continue doing the great work together, because it takes a village, it takes a team to do this work, and I'm honored to be part of yours.
Thank you so much, sir. Dr. Okanlami, and I've been trying to make sure that I pronounced it properly, and I think I finally got it, my friend. But thank you so much for the work that you do. Thank you for your story, your journey. Again, I know so many are going to receive hope and meaning and inspiration through this and through our time together. Dr. O, I feel a fitting way to close our session is with a video of you advocating for healthcare research, education, and really empowering the community with regards to disabilities. So we're going to show that video at the end of our time together. My friends, I hope you've been inspired by this. Dr. O, I speak blessings, well wishes, goodness, continue to be just the light that you are in these dark times. As I mentioned earlier, continue to be the best version of yourself and fulfill those God-given dreams. And I know there's so much more that's in store for you. My friends, as we close, I want to remind you, for more resources surrounding special needs and disability and mental health, I invite you to visit our website, C3 In This Together. Also, if you've been impacted by this video, please give us the thumbs up button, subscribe to our YouTube channel, which will come on the screen, C3 In This Together. Please share this video, comment, let us know how you've been impacted. And as always, please take our 21-day thankfulness and next gen hope challenges. We will see you next time for 30 minutes in our own voice, our series. Stay tuned for the video from Dr. Farami Okanlami. We'll see you soon.
I would say that my childhood was a fairly normal Nigerian immigrant family childhood. Nigerians have high expectations for education. My mother is a pediatric intensivist, and my father was a neonatal intensivist. I had an opportunity to see what medicine was. So when I was a child, I always said I wanted to be a doctor.
As parents, we were totally flattered that he even wanted to go into medicine. Farami could have gone to college and done almost anything.
I started to come into my own, so to speak, in middle school and junior high. I played sports all through my life, and when I got to high school, I played basketball, soccer, lacrosse, and track. Sports were never the primary part of my life. They were always something that I did in addition to my academics. I think that sport gave me an opportunity to truly find my ability to manage stress and difficulty and loss and success in a way that I think have helped shape me throughout life.
When he graduated from Stanford University, he went to the University of Michigan for medical school. After his graduation from medical school, he was accepted into the orthopedic surgery residency program at Yale. And that's where he was in his third year when the accident occurred.
It was a day off. I remember that it was 4th of July, and I lived in an apartment complex that had a pool on one of the rooftops. And so we were getting people together to enjoy the day that we all had off. So the actual jump or impact itself, I don't remember, right? I don't remember hitting anything, right? But I knew immediately that I had injured my spinal cord. I was awake, I was alert, and I was trying to call out, but my head was underwater. People noticed that I was struggling in the water and were able to pull me out.
I was on call in the pediatric ICU and realized that I'd missed about 3 calls from a certain friend of his. So when I tried to call him back, all he could tell me was, "Mrs. Okanlami, there's been an accident. Fermi's hurt, we're on the way to the hospital, we'll call you back." So I drove home, and the one thing that he mentioned at that time that tipped me off to the fact that this was a serious accident was that he said he's hurt, but he can move his hands.
I was calm the entire time. I wasn't crying, I wasn't scared, and I don't know if that's because in this weird way I knew that the Lord was in control. So right after the injury, I had 2 surgeries at Yale, and even as an orthopedic surgery resident that took care of spinal cord injuries and thought that I had some semblance of understanding of what disability was like, I had no idea.
As a mother, I felt more sorry for him because of the type of active individual that he was. And I just could not imagine Fermi unable to dance, run, jump, because that was his life. Triple jumper, track and field runner. Even when he wasn't on a sports field, he never stood still.
If there was any time that I had a brief thought of, why do I have to be like this? The times that I had those thoughts were actually with respect to being with my son.
Hi, Dad.
Hey, Al. And it was during these years that he was growing up and was wanting someone to run with him and roll with him and play with him that I couldn't do it the way that I envisioned I would do as a dad, because until I was able to know more about my body, I wasn't able to do as much with my son as I wanted to.
So in the first few weeks, we were all expectant, but he was very optimistic. And the day that his legs moved, that was a day that probably gave him a whole new lease on life.
It's hard to explain a feeling like that. Being an academic All-American triple jumper turned orthopedic surgeon, that physical feats were something that you thought were part of what defined you, to then not be able to move anything from your chest down for 2 months, when something moves, it was awesome. It isn't even that I thought that there was a guarantee that I would walk again, but it was that I knew that regardless of what did happen, I would be okay.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Woo! Not enough runway. Not enough runway. I've been blessed that I'm an assistant professor of family medicine, an assistant professor of physical medicine and rehabilitation, and I'm the director of adaptive sports in MCHAMP, which is Michigan Center for Human Athletic Medicine and Performance.
Most important thing is just get out there and play and have fun.
When I wheel into a room, that whether they know my background or not, there's an assumption that we have something in common. My patients that are in wheelchairs or with walkers or crutches or some sort of mobility concern, they think he gets it.
I was excited when I first heard about the fact that family medicine here at University of Michigan had a doctor with a spinal cord injury. He not only knows about some of the challenges posed to people with spinal cord injury, he lives it.
He has such an inspiring story. It definitely opens your eyes to how much you can do within medicine, because he didn't let that stop him from pursuing his dream.
I still play sports. I play wheelchair basketball, I played sled hockey, I go swimming. Sure, it's not the same exact way that I was triple jumping or long jumping or high jumping, but there are lots of things that people can't do, even if they haven't had spinal cord injuries. And I don't think that most people live their lives being upset about the things that they can't do. You take the things that you can do and you do them.
I'm so proud of what Ferami has accomplished in spite of the challenges that have come his way. I know that the best is yet to come.
I think each person's thriving may look different. Are you doing everything that you can do? And if you're doing everything that you can do, you're absolutely thriving. Don't look at your neighbor. Don't look at what you may have been able to do before. Look at whatever it is that you want to do now and figure out how we can get it done. And you may be able to do more than you can even imagine.